Welcome to Trench Tactics, my series where I aim to provide a breakdown of factions, sub-factions and strategies for the wonderful new game of Trench Crusade. Today we are looking at every court of the Seven Headed Serpent model and how to field them. This uses the statistics of models within the Playtest Rules version 1.6.3. We'll be going over the core court of the Seven faction, which technically doesn't have any sub-factions yet, instead having 7 sins that give different models access to different abilities. Because they are just too much to cover properly in a single video, and are likely to be changed soon, I'll be focusing on what is core to the faction, with little emphasis placed on the sins. The unique mechanic for the Court of the Seven is the access to Goetic Powers. These are cast by spending blood markers from non-demonic, non-black Grail models anywhere across the board. Usually this means you take the blood markers from enemy models, or your own Wretched, which we will cover later. Goetic powers can come in either the form of active actions or passive powers, and must be purchased like equipment. Most court models have the demonic keyword, which means they ignore the extra blood markers caused by fire. Considering the prevalence of flamethrowers in the current meta, this is a very decent ability to have. The widely available Goetic power that isn't sin dependent for the court is Slave Master, an action that costs 1 blood to cast and can cause an allied Yoke Fiend to move, make an attack, or sacrifice itself. We will cover Yoke Fiends soon, but why would you want one of our own models to sacrifice itself? Well, if it's in melee with an opposing model and you don't want the 50-50 chance of wasting your attack, this can leave the opposing model wide open to ranged shots. It can also be used to deny your opponent some glorious deeds if you're feeling particularly evil. Lastly in this section, upon creating your court warband you must choose one of the 7 deadly sins, which serves as a pseudo-sub-faction at present. This affects the available Goetic powers you can pick from, and also the abilities of a certain model within the roster, the Desecrated Saint. Your warband can't split its affiliation, so they must all be guilty of the same chosen sin. So, starting at the top this time with our first leader, the Praetor. He has a hefty base cost of 115 ducats, but comes with 8 inches of flying movement and an incredible +3 dice to melee and ranged, giving you a 96% hit rate for both. He can be equipped with 2 Goetic powers, or just 1 if your chosen sin is Wrath, and has all the important keywords. Tough means the first out of action and result rolled against him is treated as a down, while Strong means he ignores the usually cripplingly restrictive rules for Heavy, and can wield a single 2-handed melee weapon as if it were one-handed. He also has Fear, meaning enemy models in melee have -1 dice to hit him, and makes him immune to the same effect. He is incredibly threatening, one of the scariest models in the game in terms of accuracy and speed, as flying allows him to ignore difficult terrain and take unexpected routes to his targets. One of the only downsides is that he is on a 50mm base, making him difficult to hide behind cover or line of sight blocking terrain, and you can be certain your opponent will want him dead. Finally, it is mandatory to have either him or a Sorcerer in your warband as your leader, but you can take both if you like. So let's talk builds. There are some things that the Praetor will always want to have with him. Firstly, the Malbranch Sword, a 50 ducat melee weapon that rolls 3d6 to injure and takes the sum. That's right, the weapon rolls as if it has a bloodbath every time it hits, meaning an average sum of 10.5 before using any other blood. Terrifying, and one of the best melee weapons in the game. You definitely want it on your Praetor, one of the strongest models in the game. You want to keep your Praetor alive, so reinforced armor is a must. 40 ducats is well worth it to give him -2 armor. Lastly, you probably want both a combat helmet and gas mask, as ignoring the extra blood from shrapnel and giving enemies -1 dice to injure him when using a gas weapon, which traditionally ignores armor, is quite important. Your Praetor is already a big investment, it's worth paying a little more just to keep him alive. Other than those, there are 2 main build variations. The melee focused build is a bit cheaper, totaling 235 ducats. On top of what we already mentioned, you add a trench shield and gas grenades. The gas grenades have 8-inch range with a 3-inch blast, the assault keyword, ignore armor and cause an extra blood dice, but have -1 dice to injure. You won't care about the -1 dice to injure, you just want the 2 blood on the target to then spend it to roll 5d6 on injury with the Malbranch, taking the 3 highest. The assault keyword permits this as it lets you use a ranged weapon and still charge, with 96% chance to hit ranged attacks, 96% chance to hit melee, and 76% chance of rolling at least a 12 on 5d6 to injure, taking the 3 highest. You've got around a 70% chance of this all going to plan and killing whatever you targeted, even if it has -3 armor. That's pretty damn good odds. On top of this, the build takes the Trench Shield to improve your own survivability to -3 armor, making your Praetor that little bit harder to take down. The other option is the Hybrid build. The Hybrid costs an eye-watering 269 ducats, but for a good reason. Along with the usual, you take the Serpent Assault Gun for 50 ducats and the Sword for 4. The Serpent Assault Gun has a powerful 36-inch range, has the keywords Heavy, Gas, and Assault, and can attack 2 different targets within 6 inches of each other or just the same target twice. It's basically the gas grenade on steroids, but doesn't ignore armor. You can fire this as you move your Praetor up the board, doling out lots of blood markers thanks to the gas keyword, fueling Goetic Powers, or setting things up for an easy kill with the Malebranche sword. Also, Assault as it stands means if you want to charge you can only fire it once, but if the current rules leaks are true, you might soon be able to fire it twice. Don't hold me to that. Lastly, a humble sword in the offhand replaces the shield, as you can't bring the shield with a heavy ranged weapon. The swords will have critical, meaning you get an extra dice to injure if you crit. We build a tall list, not a wide one. This means fewer dudes, but better ones. Our stat profiles are strong, and we want to make the most of them. Next up, the Sorcerer. 75 ducats, 6 inches flying movement, with +1 dice to melee and range. The Sorcerer can have an impressive 3 Goetic Powers, and needs to take at least 1. That power will usually be his unique power, Burning Inferno. You can spend up to 3 blood to cast this, which serves as a 36-inch ranged attack, with the keywords Blast, Scatter, and Fire. The blast is affected by how much blood you spend. A 1 blood cast has a 1-inch blast, and a 3 blood has a 3-inch blast, and so on. Scatter means if you miss, it can still do damage, as it lands off target depending on how far you are from getting a 7. Basically, if you roll a 5, it goes 2 inches in a direction chosen by your opponent, because it was 2 off of a 7. But if you put 3 inches of blast into it, you're still dealing damage. Either way, you still want it to hit, since if it does, it ignores armor. He also has an inbuilt ability, Blessings of the Serpent Moon, where after you've been hit by an attack but before the injury is rolled, you can spend blood to reduce that injury roll by up to 3, at the cost of 2 blood per point. This can even be used against armor-piercing attacks, which is where you'll get the most value out of your blood spend. Overall, the Burning Inferno is the main attraction here. The Sorcerer is a powerful artillery support piece. He causes fear and has a +1 dice to melee, but his job is to throw fireballs from 18 inches away or more, using his flight to get to high ground to improve his odds of hitting. Note that you can't give this guy ranged weapons, but nothing would outclass the value of Burning Inferno anyway. Due to his purpose being pretty fixed, there isn't a huge amount of build variety outside of the Goetic Powers, which are sin dependent. Usually, you'll pay 165 ducats to give him reinforced armor, a trench shield, an instrument, headgear, and a Burning Inferno Goetic. Since his job is to be an armor-ignoring artillery piece, he doesn't need weapons, so he can use those hands to carry a shield which brings his armor to -3, and an instrument to improve dash chances within 4 inches. This helps him play peekaboo. He pokes out from behind cover, casts Burning Inferno, then dashes back to safety. Can we change anything here? Well, the Sorcerer can get by with only Burning Inferno. It's risky, but if the ducats are needed elsewhere, it can be done. If you want to give him an extra non-sin dependent power, Slave Master can be cast on a blood battery, something we'll get to later, to get a net gain of 1 blood. Your Sorcerer will usually be sat back anyway, so will probably be within casting range of the Yoke Fiend and the Wretched. Next up, one of the most feared models in the entire game, the Hunter of the Left-Hand Path. 110 ducats, 6 inches of movement, +1 dice to melee and +2 dice to ranged, and he's loaded with lots of abilities. First up, he has Shadow Walker, an inbuilt Goetic 2 spell that allows him to retreat from melee without being attacked. This is huge, as it gives him an easy way out if he's stuck with something terrifying like a Warwolf, Anchorite, or Brazen Bull. The Hunter is all about being slippery, and this is his get out of jail card. Speaking of slippery, he can also cast Left-Hand Path. At the cost of 2 blood, he can teleport between any pieces of scenery on the board, as long as they're not tiny bits of scatter terrain. This is one of the best mobility abilities in the game, and allows him to threaten almost anything on the board at any given time. It can even be used while taking actions like charging, which is pretty insane. His third ability is Oracle Beast Cloak, yet another Goetic power that costs 3 blood to cast this time, and can only be used once per game, but entirely nullifies the result of an injury roll against him. This is essentially a conditional tough, and saves him from death once per game, as long as you have decent blood economy across the board. The Hunter is an incredible sniper assassin, especially thanks to the fact he has Infiltrate built in, allowing him to deploy anywhere outside of line of sight, 8 inches away from enemy models after all other models are deployed. He is equipped forcibly with the Bow of Lathe, which always occupies one hand, but we would never get rid of that anyway, as it might be the single best weapon in the game. He is great at shooting, decent at melee, and can kill almost anything. You'll see why shortly. So, for the build, 175 Ducats, and you can give him reinforced armor, a head taker, and headgear. The head taker has a +2 flat bonus to injure unactivated enemy models, which is usually a little tough to trigger, but with the Hunter, you can access almost any target on the board at any time, giving you a much higher chance of getting that bonus and the full value out of those 15 Ducats. We don't take the head taker on much else, because if you don't get the bonus, the weapon is just a trench club you've paid 5 times the price for. So, the Bow of Lathe. It has 24-inch range, always occupies a hand slot, and has the assault keyword. What makes it insane is that before rolling for injury, you can choose between ignoring the target's armor or adding +2 dice to the injury roll. These are both premium buffs, usually only found on weapons like the heavy shotgun and heavy flamer, both of which are expensive and operate at short range. Like I said, one of the best weapons in the game, easily. Also in this slide, I've added a table that tells you about the best choices for your Bow of Lathe depending on the target's armor. The Hunter of the left-hand path will be your assassin, taking out key enemy targets while jumping around to evade danger. While he can claim objectives quickly and easily, in court your objective is usually the death of your opponent's models, not scoring objectives. Now we come to the Hell Knight, our last elite. 100 Ducats, 6 inches of movement, +2 dice to melee with 0 to ranged, and -2 armor inbuilt. He can take a Goetic power, and has access to the inbuilt Goetic called Blood Magic, where before rolling an injury, he can pull a blood marker off of any non-demonic model in the game and use it against the target. One of his best features is that the inbuilt armor I mentioned actually cannot be ignored, which is incredible in the current meta where armor ignore is held in such high regard. This works against things like gas, fire, anti-tank hammers, anti-material rifles, all of it. He also has the strong keyword, which when combined with +2 melee dice makes him a big threat. Despite his immunity to armor ignore, he still doesn't have tough, so you need to play him with a little bit of care. Here are the build options. First we have the Melee Master, 129 Ducats to give him gas grenades, a Hellblade and a sword. The Hellblade is a heavy weapon, with +1 dice to injure, and the fire keyword for extra blood dice. The vision here is that between gas and fire, you put out a lot of blood, giving him a good chance to kill or stack it for future Goetic uses. His job with this build is to push objectives steadily and contest key targets, and if you like you can give him a trench shield instead of a sword for 6 Ducats more. Just be aware, the armor from the shield doesn't benefit from the immunity to ignore armor. The next option is the ranged build, which will probably surprise anybody who doesn't know what the Ophidian rifle is. Speaking of, for 140 Ducats we can give him exactly that, along with incendiary ammo. The Ophidian rifle has 30 inches of range, ignores penalties for range and cover, and actually benefits from these things instead. That means if your target is 16 inches away or more and sitting behind cover, you'll roll with +2 dice to hit. As this crazy gun is heavy and elite locked, the Hell Knight is our best candidate to use it. You set your knight on a rear objective or some high ground and snipe accurately at anything beyond 15 inches. With incendiary ammo, you add the fire keyword to the mix, generating more blood for your Goetics. While this build does want to operate at long range, it can be worth giving him a polearm or a pair of trench clubs to take advantage of his +2 dice to melee for when it's time to stop camping. There are definitely more options, especially with the heavy flamethrower. You can use blood magic to get +1 dice to injure while ignoring armor, making it a big threat. The Unholy Relic can be a good pickup for the melee build, as it gives the keyword fear, debuffing enemies and making the Hell Knight immune to fear itself. Finally, the combat helmet is rarely a bad choice. The gas mask, in this case, is much less necessary on Hell Knights, as its usual purpose to mitigate the armor ignoring property of gas doesn't apply to the Hell Knight. And now we come to the Yoke Fiend, a much cheaper 30 Ducats for 6 inches movement and +1 dice to melee. His first ability is actually a restriction and a serious downside. Hateful means the Yoke Fiend, on activation, if a non-Black Grail, non-demonic enemy model is within line of sight and 12 inches, he must charge it immediately. You can suppress this crippling crash-out tendency by putting a restraining muzzle on the Fiend for 10 ducats, which also gives them +1 dice to ranged attacks, strangely enough. Their second ability is Torturer, giving them the privilege of attacking a non-demonic friendly within 1 inch, but can only make 1 attack if choosing to do so. This is used almost solely to hit Wretched to generate blood for Goetic Powers. The Yoke Fiend is cheap and is 1/2 of your blood battery. They are key to making sure you've got enough blood, and you can take as many of them as you like, though you rarely need more than 2 or 3. Now, the build that makes him into a blood battery. The Torturer is a 38 ducat build that gives the Fiend a torture instrument, a weapon that only rolls a single dice to injure, and causes an extra blood marker on injuries. The single dice means you can't kill your Wretched without a crit, so you can sit back and torture them all game without much care. As you're not spending for a muzzle, you'll want him to sit back behind a rear wall or in a building, committing unspeakable atrocities to your Wretched in appropriate privacy. If you want to use a Fiend for something else, you can give it a flamethrower and a muzzle for a total 70 ducats. The flamethrower has 8 inches of range, auto hits, ignores armor and has -1 dice to injure, but causes an extra blood thanks to the fire keyword. This guarantees 2 blood per hit against most enemy models, and combos well with the Slave Master Goetic spell, as an ally can cast it on him for 1 blood and usually get 2 in return, which is good for the blood economy. Lastly, the melee build. Depending on how much you are throwing on him, it costs anywhere between 36 to 56 ducats. Generally, you just want 2 clubs, but if you add a restraining muzzle and a gas grenade, you can create a surprisingly dangerous assault combo. No matter what, you rarely, if ever, are putting armor on a Yoke Fiend. We need the money to give the elites their designer Malbranch swords and diamond-encrusted serpent guns. Now we come to the Wretched. The 20 ducat cost is the best this stat line has to offer, as he has 6-inch movement and -1 dice to both melee and ranged. He is subject to the Law of Hell ability, meaning if he ever does take an enemy elite out of action somehow, or performs a glorious deed, he is immediately removed from the game and your warband. Thankfully, this doesn't count towards morale, and it lowers your warband size for the game. This is more for flavor than anything else, and you and your opponent will probably be laughing if this does trigger. They can't equip anything that costs more than 10 ducats, but must have at least 1 melee weapon, strangely enough. They're your only non-demonic model, which makes them the targets of your Yoke Fiend torturers, and you can't have more Wretched than you have demonic models in your warband, so no Wretched spam, as funny as that would be. They're incredibly cheap and are the other half of a blood battery. They've got terrible stats, and exist only to be tortured, which sounds miserable. If you're really desperate in a game, they can try to make their way towards an objective, but will spend most games getting violated in the deployment zone by Yoke Fiends. As for their builds, knife. Just a knife for 1 ducat. It's a knife, nothing else, giving them a total stat line of -2 dice to hit. We are forced to give him the knife. I think it's something the unions mandated. Now for something a bit scarier. The Pit Locust. 90 ducats for 8 inches of flying movement that has +2 dice to hit in melee and inbuilt -2 armor. It comes with the swarming attack, which means if a Locust charges, it gets an extra attack until the end of the turn that doesn't suffer from offhand penalties. On top of this, the first attack it makes each turn has shrapnel, causing +1 blood markers as long as the target doesn't negate it. Their only equipment choice is the Crown of Hellfire, which causes a blood marker on every enemy model the wearer is in contact with at the end of its activation, unless they negate fire. The Pit Locust is expensive, but undeniably useful. It's fast and ignores difficult terrain, but has no bonus to dash, so struggles to get across the board without something to improve that action success attempt. They cause a good amount of blood thanks to shrapnel and their extra attacks, and the Crown of Hellfire helps your blood economy boom. Again, not much here in terms of builds, it's just a question of if you take the Hellfire Crown or not. If you do, it's 105 ducats total and can generate 4 blood markers in a single activation, sometimes more if engaged with more enemy models. This makes the Locust into a less reliable walking blood battery, who can stack markers on strong enemy targets, or pick off weaker models to help tip the scales towards morale loss for your opponent. Lastly, the notorious and much feared Desecrated Saint. 140 ducats base for 6 inches of movement, +3 dice to hit in melee, nothing for ranged, and -3 armor inbuilt. Like the Praetor, +3 dice to hit means you are missing only 4% of the time, less likely than a natural 1 on a d20. With -3 armor, fear, tough and strong, he is a mighty pain in the ass to kill for anything, and a terror to models in melee. He has a special rule regarding his 3 functional arms, giving him the slots to equip 3 melee weapons, one of which can be two-handed and benefit from strong. He can swing all 3, and none are affected by offhand penalties. Keep in mind, like with all strong models, they have to use the two-handed weapon first, so no cheating. The Saint also can't take any equipment, armor, or a shield, and can't operate or take ranged weapons. Your chosen sin is huge for the Desecrated Saint, as it decides which aura he comes in built with. Some are incredible, others are just annoying, and I'll get to them soon. Overall, the Desecrated Saint is crazy strong and crazy expensive. Experienced opponents will know he is a big, slow murder machine and play around his presence. For that reason, you mostly only want to consider him in a Wrath or Envy warband, where he will perform at his best thanks to the mobility buffs they offer. Now, let's talk about what to put in all those hands. The most efficient build is the Swordpocalypse, where you give him a Hellblade and 2 swords for 163 ducats total. You'll enjoy the critical aspects of the swords with your +3 dice to hit, and the Hellblade serves nicely with its +1 dice to injure and extra blood marker from fire. You can change a sword to a head taker if you're feeling bold, but you're risking a waste of 11 ducats if you don't use it right, or if your opponent just plays around it. So, why no Malbranch sword on the Saint? Well, you only get one, and it's generally reserved for the Praetor. The Praetor is faster, flies, has Goetic Powers, and is overall a much better fit compared to the bigger, slower Saint. If you forego the Praetor, it can be a decent pickup with certain sins. While I'm not going over the Goetic sins in detail in this video due to the likelihood they get changed in the next week, I'll comment over a few sins here since they're core to the Saint. Wrath is brilliant for the Saint. +1 dice to attacks and dash attempts for all allies within 8 inches is an insane buff better than any instrument, and helps solve the problem of the Saint being so slow. Having +4 dice to hit is overkill, but it sure does feel good. Lust causes enemies within 6 inches of the Saint to lose benefits of armor, only excluding things like Holy Icon shields and Infernal armor. This hard counters most elite enemies by stripping their armor, making it statistically unlikely for much to survive a charge from a Desecrated Saint. Sloth causes enemies within 8 inches to treat minor injuries against them as down results, essentially converting to a +1 dice to injure after your first attack, countering martyrdom pills and other -1 dice to injure, and slowing your opponents right down. Lastly, out of the ones I'll cover, Envy causes enemies within 12 inches to be unable to charge models already engaged with their allies. This is good in melee mirror matches, but very niche. The main reason you'd take Envy is that other models in your list get the coveted Position Goetic Power, a 2-blood spell that allows a model to change positions with any other model they can see within 12 inches, as long as the base fits and the target isn't already in melee. This either slingshots the Saint forward or pulls enemy models towards the Saint, dooming them to deal with his onslaught. Now I've got a 900 ducat example list to share. It's a Wrath Sin warband. Since this video hasn't gone in depth on Goetic Powers, I've chosen a low Goetic playstyle, meaning only one blood battery is really needed. The list is very elite-centric, which is the general playstyle of the court. The Praetor, Sorcerer and Hunter, along with the Saint, serve as carry models and are well equipped for that purpose. The playstyle aims to win via killing opposing enemy models until the warband is wiped or they fail morale, and is less focused on objective play. The Desecrated Saint, with his Wrath aura, buffs the attack and mobility of the Praetor, and it is very unlikely anything survives being targeted by the both of them. With 4 out of 7 models in the band being elite, we are less susceptible to morale loss, even if the blood battery gets taken out. For some extra info not visible in the screenshots, the Praetor also has Mark of Cain, a Wrath exclusive upgrade, granting -1 dice to injury rolls against him, improving survivability. The Sorcerer of course has Burning Inferno, and the Yoke Fiend is equipped to round out the Ducats, which is why he has Sword over Club. I'm pretty sure he's pleased. And that's all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I wanted to clarify that due to the impending full rules release, I've not gone into sub-factions or sins as of yet, but those are definitely coming. Any outdated videos like the new Antioch one will be remastered in due time, but the changes people have mentioned in the comments are only in the rumour mill right now and are not live. Anyway, if you enjoyed, like and share the video, leave a comment telling me what you want to see next, subscribe if you want to stick around, and become a channel member if you want to honour me with that support. In return, you'll soon get to vote on what faction or sub-faction gets covered, and you'll also get a shout out in the credits of all future videos. This has been Trench Tactics. I'll see you around.